This is great and all, but feels too much like an Alliance expansion with all the humans and dwarves. Very fair point. And it's something that people have been talking about a lot, of course, with the release of the new short story. So we have had our first look at one of the short stories in this short story collection, and it's about Alleria, A Whisper of Warning. And it's brilliant. I don't know if you've read it. It's really, really good. I love it. And I love short stories, right? I think short stories are such a great way. I prefer them to the novels, honestly. I think they're such a great way of touching on multiple different characters for just like a little snapshot of life, which is what I want from like WoW literature, really. I feel like having just little snapshots here and there is definitely the best way of world building with outside literature. It's just text. It's not a graphic novel. It's just a short story. I'd love to have an audio version of this as well, but it is what it is. So this short story has caused controversy already. So this story is about Alleria and her visiting her son, Arator, in Silvermoon. Arator is a Silverhand knight. The words that he describes himself with. And she goes to visit him. Now, the timing of this is quite weird. We've seen the cinematic that starts the quests that we're about to read any second now. I'm not going to talk too much about this because we're going to know when these quests happen. And, you know, we've all seen the cinematic where Khadgar's like, yo, Alleria, go and find the Dark Heart. It sounds fucked up. And she's like, yeah, of course I will. I'll go get it now. And I come back with Dark Heart in hand. Okay? And this story is set before she goes on a mission for Khadgar to find the Dark Heart, where she's warning Arator. Her reason for going to see Arator is she wants to warn him to stay the fuck away from any fighting because this shit is real. That's what this is about. Whatever she has learned about the Dark Heart, suddenly she finds it very fucking scary, and she's like, yo, Arator, shit is going down, and just do not fight. Stay the fuck out of this fight, which obviously is stupid, goes down very badly. Arator is not happy with this. In this story, she's wearing her silver and white armor, which is like the Windrunner colors, honestly. We know it's what Sylvanas wore when she was Ranger General. And it's what Verisa wears just in her everyday life. But we also know that at the end of we think at the end of the Dark Heart quests that are coming out in about 5 minutes, she's still wearing her green outfit, which suggests to me that it's whatever she has seen in those Dark Heart quests that has scared her. Like, she hasn't gone straight from Khadgar in that cinematic we saw to warn Arator. She's gone from Khadgar and she's gone on the initial bit of her journey, and she's seen the stuff that we see in those quests, and it's what she sees in those quests that actually makes her go. So I think this story is set after the Dark Heart quests that we're about to play. I might be wrong. It doesn't really matter. It's just an interesting little tidbit. But that's what I think currently. Everyone come and laugh at me when I turn out to be wrong, right? That's how it seems to me. I feel like whatever she has seen in the Dark Heart quests have scared her, because she certainly doesn't seem scared when she's talking to Khadgar. Another thing that backs that up. She's kind of nonchalant about it. I think she goes on these quests, she sees that shit is real, she changes into some more cool gear, and she goes to warn Arator. That's not what's causing the controversy in this story, though. There's lots of cool stuff in this story. She goes into Silvermoon, because that's where her son lives now. Just where he lives. He lives in Silvermoon. Why not? We talked earlier about the fact that Lorthamar has, you know, he's made it a thing that all high elves are welcome back into Silvermoon as pilgrims to visit the Sunwell. It's open to all. You know, it's their legacy and their culture and their kind of inheritance as much as it is the Blood Elves who live there. And I think that's great. Already kind of building bridges between the Blood Elves and the High Elves, and that's been happening since BFA. That's not new. So it's perfectly reasonable. And you know, there's the things that I like about this story, straight up. I like that Arator lives in Silvermoon. I like that there is such an emphasis on the rebuilding of Silvermoon. It feels like every other paragraph here talks about some area of Silvermoon which is being rebuilt. Lorthamar himself lives in a new house that's been built in Silvermoon. Like a restored house in an area of Silvermoon that currently in game is completely wrecked. Do you think that Silvermoon will turn flyable today? No, I think this is in preparation for midnight, when I think Silvermoon will probably be the hub city, and therefore neutral, right? And rebuilt. And it's really interesting, like, they are rebuilding the destroyed parts of Silvermoon, and all the rebuilt houses in Silvermoon all have red front doors. That's kind of what marks them. And he lives in one of these rebuilt houses. I think that's great. And, you know, he's half high elf. He was brought up in the Alliance, but he's a member of the Silver Hand, and Lorthamar is clearly like, yeah, you are a valued person to have rebuilding our Silvermoon. You're a valued member of Silvermoon society. You should live here. That's great. I really like that. I think that's fantastic. When she goes to visit him, now, of course, she has been back to Silvermoon a couple of times in recent times. The first time is during BFA in the Void Elf Unlock quest, where she goes to try and convince the Blood Elves to become members of the Alliance for BFA. And she's allowed to go and visit the Sunwell. And her very presence next to the Sunwell causes the void within her to erupt and attack the Sunwell. And it's decided that, you know, Lorthamar is like, you know, your intentions aren't really important. Your very presence here is dangerous because you've got the void inside you and you're like a Trojan horse. It doesn't matter what your intentions are. That sucks. So you're not allowed in here. However, she has been back before now. She went back to Silvermoon for Lorthamar's wedding. And she was invited to Lorthamar's wedding because they've known each other for thousands of years. And she was told she had to be the fuck out by nightfall. Certainly, one would think, by midnight. And that is the same rules that she's got on her visit this time. You know, she wants to go and visit her son. Lorthamar himself comes to meet her at the gate and is like, yo, you know you're not really allowed here, but... Oh, that was in Suramar? Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Why do they talk about it here, then? They talk about her visiting for his wedding here. In this story. Anyway. Maybe that's a mistake. Maybe it's a mistake in my reading. Either way, doesn't really matter. The fact is, she's allowed in, but she has to leave by nightfall. It's very kind of Cinderella, right? And he meets her at the gate himself, and he's like, yo, you can come in. But yeah, you have to fuck off. Otherwise, literally, we're going to fucking kill you. Last time they met? No, but he refers to the fact that was the rules last time as well. He says, like, when they meet here, let's read it. This is going to spoil the edit, but let's fucking read it. Yeah. These were the same conditions upon which she had agreed to attend his wedding in Suramar. Okay, so fine. She hasn't been into Silvermoon since, but this is her first time back in Silvermoon since the events of the Sunwell back in BFA. So the same rules that apply for his wedding. She's only allowed in. Sorry, I misremembered the reading of it there. It's kind of nice that they're letting her in at all, to be honest. But yeah, she's got to be gone by sundown. Bit funny since the void can come out whatever, but hey, such is life. How long do high blood elves live? Thousands of years. And when she gets to visit Arator at his new build, Turalyon is already there. And the implication is that he spends quite a fair bit of time, you know, a not insignificant amount of time. He's not there all the time by any means, but he's not an unregular visitor by sounds of things, just to hang out with Arator. Apparently does it, you know, fairly regularly, which is interesting because don't forget, he is the de facto leader of the Alliance at the moment. He is literally I guess you'd call him the Regent King of Stormwind. Yeah, he's the Lord Regent of Stormwind. He is the head of the Alliance right now. And he is allowed into Silvermoon. It's unimaginable that they don't know he's there and don't allow him there. So I guess he could be given like diplomatic immunity as a visiting leader and stuff like that. But the fact that he just pops in every now and then to see Arator into a horde capital is worth remarking on, honestly. And it really goes to show how peaceful relations are between the Horde and the Alliance right now. They might be different factions. They are still markedly different factions, but we've been at peace, don't forget, for 5 in-game years right now. 5 in-game years. In terms of, if this was the Second World War, you know, we're talking about a German coming to visit Britain in like 1950, I guess, would be the equivalent. Yeah, which, I mean, did happen. So, yeah, there's that. That's, and there are other things, before I get onto the controversies, really, other cool things that I like about this story. Not a German, the leader. Well, not really. Yeah, it would be the German leader, you're right, but not the leader who was leader during the war. Because Turalyon kind of missed the war. He did some warfront shit. You know, he took part in the very end of the war, but he certainly wasn't the leader of the Alliance during the war. And half the time, he fucking lost the warfronts anyway. Kind of shit, honestly. And then he became king of Stormwind during a time of peace, essentially. And don't forget, is the most successful leader of the Alliance of all time. He has presided over the longest period of peace in, like, human history, honestly. Say what you like about him. Kind of chill. This also, by the way, completely destroys those kind of speculations that he is like a warmonger and just wants to fucking destroy the Horde at any cost, and that, you know, he's just like some light fanatic. Because he's not. He's just a fucking chill old man. He's all like, yo, I'm just gonna go and visit my son now in fucking Silvermoon. I'm not even gonna kill anyone. It's all fucking chill. And I always said, and I always got shit for this in this chat, I always said there's literally no evidence that he's some kind of fucking light zealot who just wants to kill everyone. I always said that, like, the only evidence we have is that he's actually a pretty fucking chill, peaceful dude. Yeah, the fact that he's presided over such a long period, like, you know, there was a 3-year time skip, which means while he was in charge of the Alliance for 3 years, it was basically the only time where they didn't fucking start a war. Yeah, but like, Alleria tortured that guy too, and no one says that she's a fucking warmonger. It's okay when void people do it, but when light people do it, it's like, yeah, fucking warmonger, not in control, some kind of puppet zealot sort of thing. Some void person does it, you're like, it's just fine, that's normal. They're fine, they're cool. The only reason people thought it is that Yrel went aggro. Yeah, but we don't even know that Yrel went aggro, really, to be honest. Whose word, like, whose account? We've only got one account of Yrel going aggro, and that is from the fucking Maga orcs who, you know, did try and kill everyone on Azeroth and did literally nothing to redeem themselves. We just literally went one day, you're fine now, don't worry. It was literally, that's the only account we've got. It's from the Maga orcs, the ones who literally tried to kill us all. But yeah, fine, man. Yeah, she's really bad. I'm not saying she's not really bad. All I'm saying is the only account we have is that of fucking Grommash. The literal baddie of Warlords of Draenor, who does literally nothing to redeem himself. The one account we have is from her victims. No, victims is a bit of a word. The one account we have is from Grommash and the other Maga orcs who didn't join her. Lots of the Maga orcs did, willfully. But he didn't. And that's the only account we have. So I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying, I'm pointing out from as a historian that that's the only account we have. Okay, so yeah, the other cool thing, so lots of things I like about this. I really like that it absolutely destroys the narrative that Turalyon is a warmonger, because he's just some chill old dude, and I think that's great. I love that. He's a bit goofy. He really, really fucking loves his wife. That's another thing I love about this short story. The love, the very, very clear love that Turalyon has for Alleria and for Arator, for me, as a married guy with a son, is fucking heartbreaking. And I love it so much. I think it's so great. I just fucking love it. And I think it really leans into that. And I think that's wonderful. Turalyon has love for you. Yeah, I know he's he's got love for Alleria and he's got love for Arator, and I think it's really, really nice. And his kind of selfless love towards Alleria is absolutely fucking wild. I love it. And I love all the interactions between them. It's the kind of thing a well-written short story does really well. It's why I love short stories being a way to tackle WoW lore and WoW character development and world building outside. I think they work much better than full-blown novels. I think short stories are just great. I think they're fucking brilliant. Because if you have a novel, what you do is you have to like choose a couple of characters, you know, like main lore characters, and you have to send them on an adventure with a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it has to be like a significant event that happens, which is then you're into territory of, oh, well, this kind of thing should be in the game, really. If it's a significant event, it should be in the game. And I get that. I do understand it. And you avoid all of that by having short stories, because then if it's a short story, it's just a little slice of world building. And I think that's so good. Like Star Wars short stories, the best way of exploring Star Wars lore. I think WoW short stories are like the Warhammer 40,000 kind of short stories that you get in like fucking White Dwarf magazine and stuff, and in codexes and stuff. I think they're the best way of exploring 40k lore. And I think short stories are the best way of exploring WoW lore. 100%. I think they're so good. Do you think Turalyon would forsake the light for Alleria? Yeah, I think he would. Definitely. So I love that about it. Another cool thing is Arator's tattoos. We discover, so Arator has basically no kind of relationship with his mum. He's only got a very kind of basic relationship with his father. And, you know, they're trying to... Okay, so the rebuilding of Silvermoon is there for gameplay. It's there to tell us that, you know, Silvermoon's going to be rebuilt in time for midnight. But it's also there as a literary device, right? So, you know, this story is about Alleria and Turalyon trying to rebuild a relationship with their son, you know? It was war that destroyed their relationship with their son. They had to go away through the dark portal and like save all of, you know, the entire world. And they are trying to rebuild after that. And the very slow pace of rebuilding Silvermoon that is talked about in the book a lot is an obvious kind of metaphor in comparison for that, right? You know, it's obviously meant to kind of like go alongside that. It's nice. It's nice. So he doesn't really have a very good relationship with either of them, but he's trying, and so are they. And what is really interesting is there's a bit where he like rolls up his sleeves or whatever, and on one arm he's got a picture of a golden dragon, and on the other arm he's got a tattoo of a shadowy dragon. So he's a member of the Silver Hand, and he's always talking about the light, and he's always saying, you know, Alleria, Mum, I hope the light blesses you. I hope you'll find your way in the light and stuff like that. He is very much a light shill. He talks about the light. He worships the light. He is all about the light. His eyes are golden these days. They used to be green. They talk about this in the story as well, but like literally in game, his eyes used to be green because he was a blood elf model. And then during Legion, when you saw him in Legion, they changed to golden. And that's because of the Sunwell, and like a lot of their eyes turn golden, and I think that's great. The fact that he's got a tattoo of a golden dragon and a tattoo of a shadow dragon shows that he appreciates that, and I said this before and you all made fun of me, he really is the child of light and shadow. And I said this back in Legion, and you all fucking laughed at me. And you all said, no,
because Alleria wasn't part of the void when he was born. He can't be the child of light and shadow because Alleria hadn't been touched by the void when he was born.
And it's like, don't be dumb. If my dad becomes a famous wrestler tomorrow, my dad takes up wrestling tomorrow and becomes a really famous wrestler, then it's reasonable and fair to call me the son of that famous wrestler. Doesn't it? It doesn't matter that he wasn't a wrestler when I was born. I'm still the son of a famous wrestler, even if he becomes a famous wrestler tomorrow. You wouldn't go, oh, Tally, you know Tally is the son of that famous wrestler. No one would turn around and go,
no, because he wasn't a wrestler when Tally was born, so Tally isn't the son of a famous wrestler.
Yeah, my dad is Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Yeah, it's well known. So when I say that Arator is the real child of light and shadow, and motherfuckers come up in this chat going,
no, she wasn't touched by the void when he was born, so she's not the child of light and shadow, because I literally don't understand how fucking language works, and the only important thing is I try and prove you wrong on your own stream, so I'm just going to look like a fucking idiot by doing that right now.
No, it was never a good argument then, and it's definitely not a good argument now. That motherfucker is the child of light and shadow. I've been saying it since Legion. It's a fact. He is. And the fact is, he sees himself as that, right? So whether he is the prophesized child of light and shadow, I think he is, by the way. And I've been saying that since Legion as well, even when everyone was laughing at me and telling me I was wrong. And if you don't want me to fucking go on about it so much, now that I'm obviously right, you shouldn't have fucking laughed at me so much back then and said I was wrong, should you? If you'd all just agreed with me then, I wouldn't be banging on about it now, would I? Is the prophecy Illidan was meant to be? Well, Zera thought it was Illidan, yeah, for sure. But Zera was wrong about a few things when it came to Illidan, wasn't she? To be fair, it wasn't the only mistake Zera made when it came to Illidan. So yeah, there's that. And the fact is, he sees himself as, if not the, he certainly sees himself as a child of light and shadow. He's got a tattoo of a golden dragon and a tattoo of a shadowy dragon. He recognizes that both those things are a part of him, which I think is really, really cool. Tattoo is a scar with ink in it. Arator is his scars. Yeah. I think people assumed the child of light and shadow would be born from entities that would fill the child itself with light and void rather than the parents retroactively being known as... Yeah, no, I know why people were stupid and wrong linked to reality. Yeah, no, like I said at the time, I was like, yeah, you're being stupid and wrong to think that. Yeah. I know why people were being stupid and wrong. Yeah, I know. Is he joining Alleria in The War Within? Well, I think he'll definitely pop up in Midnight. So this short story places him in Silvermoon, which is almost certainly going to be the hub city in Midnight. And it places him as a resident of Silvermoon, an important resident of Silvermoon, which I think is brilliant. Like, clearly, I don't think we're going to see much of Arator in The War Within, but I would be very, very fucking surprised if he wasn't a main character in Midnight with a hot fucking new model. I always feel a bit weird reading out like WoW literature on stream because... So I wouldn't do it with one of the novels because that's something you're supposed to buy. Does that make sense? It feels a bit weird to do that. But these short stories are free, so yeah, I'd have no problem reading these out. You know, I don't want to step on like Nobble or anyone else's toes. You know, what's his name? Fuck. It's like literally, I'm not doing a bit now. It's just forgotten his name. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, yeah, them. So they do that kind of thing. I think that's lovely. You know, I'm a trained actor. I reckon I could do it pretty well, but I'll save it for when I'm just referring to little bits about it. So Garrus will be the good guy in the end. I think he's probably the last Titan in question. I think Sargeras is probably the last Titan who is talked about in the title of the expansion, The Last Titan. But that's for another day. There has been controversy about this. There's controversy. And the main controversy from this comes from the idea that basically the Horde are getting absolutely fucked in The War Within. And this is not an accusation I'm actually unsympathetic with. The War Within is a very Alliance-centric expansion so far. When are they not? Feels bad, man. But this one particularly so, you know. Like, the Earthen Dwarves are Horde and Alliance. You know, they're an allied race that both can play. And I think it's fantastic that Horde get to play as dwarves now. I think that's really, really good. But, you know, from the outside right now, that seems a bit alliance-y. You know, all their architecture is very Alliance dwarf in feeling. It hasn't got like a specific you know, Horde kind of tinge to it. It just looks like dwarven architecture, right? So it's got that alliance-y vibe to it. The Arathi are obviously humans and elves. You know, they're not Alliance because they're from the other side of the world. They don't know what the fuck the Alliance is. But, you know, they use human models and like half-elf models. And yeah, I can see how that feels kind of Alliance-y, right? The human kingdoms and all that, for sure. Now, I think it would be really cool if the Arathi turned out to be a Horde race. I think the Arathi being a Horde race makes perfect sense, honestly. You know? The Arathi of the Eastern Kingdoms, they're best buds with the fucking High Elves, right? Of Kel'Thalas, of Silvermoon. They have, like, blood oaths with these guys. It makes perfect sense. If they meet Lorthamar or something, you know, it's not even inconceivable that there are elves in Silvermoon now who are written about in the literature of the Arathi Empire. Didn't Arathi fight against trolls, though? Yeah, but again, this has been generations and generations. Like, the troll wars are over, but what isn't over is the oath between the High Elves of Kel'Thalas and those of the Lothar bloodline and the Arator. They are literally sworn to each other. You know? The troll wars are long gone, but the oath between the elves and the Arathi exists still. And it would make perfect sense if they were like, oh, hey, we are literally sworn to each other. And it's the Blood Elves now, right? So, you know, it makes perfect sense if the Arathi become allied with anyone. It makes perfect sense for them to become allied with the Horde. It makes perfect sense. I think it makes... If anything, it makes more sense than it does for them to become Alliance, apart from the fact that Faerun is like best buds with Anduin. And that's another thing, right? The storylines that we've had so far, we're following Alleria. We're following Khadgar. We're following Anduin. So far, we haven't seen any of Thrall. He is front and center in the War Within book, as is Gazlo. But, you know, we're seeing Moira, we're seeing Alleria, we're seeing Anduin, and, like, the whole story of Hallowfall is essentially Anduin and Faerun up a tree having a great adventure. So, unless Thrall's got a lot of shit going on in the final zone, yeah, I can absolutely see... Oh, Magni too, exactly. Now, Magni is technically not part of any faction because he's the speaker, and the whole point of him in BFA was that he transcended factions. Likewise, Khadgar as well, but there's no doubt that it feels very Alliance-y, right? Gazlo, being a member of the short story crew, is not a coincidence. The goblins appear in the Ringing Deeps, and... seems quite likely that they might be popping up quite a bit more as the expansion goes on. Just saying. But at the moment, that's not the case. And it does definitely feel... at the moment like the story so far in The War Within is quite Alliance-centric, right? I get that. I get why the game is becoming less about factions, but it has been very Alleria and Anduin-centric so far. There's no doubt about that. So I can understand. I am sympathetic to it as a criticism. Now, another thing that people are saying, who are complaining about this, is the fact that Silvermoon is clearly being set up to be a neutral city. I think it definitely will be a neutral city. I don't see any way it's not going to be. It's obviously going to be the hub city for Midnight. It's going to be a neutral city. It's going to be like the whole talk of Midnight is that it's bringing together the elven factions together again, and you know there's going to be a big battle defending the Sunwell at some point. Has to be neutral in many ways. Has to be like Suramar basically, and it will be, I think. And I get the idea that if you're a Horde player and you've got a lot of and I am a Horde player. I'm an Alliance player first and foremost because my main is Alliance, but I play both beyond my main, who is my main because she's always been my main rather than because I have any affinity to the Alliance from an RP point of view. Like, you know, beyond that, I play Horde and Alliance pretty equally. So, you know, my favorite race in the entire game is the Forsaken. I fucking love them. They're brilliant. They're easily the best race in the game. Every other race compared to the Forsaken is like fucking subpar. Truth. But I am sympathetic to this idea that if you're a Horde player and you've had a lot invested into Silvermoon, and Silvermoon has always been this fucking broken city, right? It's always just had this fucking scar going through it. You've never been able to fly there. It's fucking dog shit. But it's so beautiful, and it could be so good, and it's so meaningful in Warcraft lore as well. And then finally, they come to fix it up. And they come to like rebuild it, and they come to like redo it with all nice graphics and shit and give you the city that you've always wanted, and it's not Horde anymore. I can see that. I can see why that would sting, honestly. I genuinely can. I get it. I get it. My personal view is that I don't care. Like, I can be sympathetic to it, but also think it's actually a good thing that it would become neutral. A, because it would make a brilliant fucking hub city for an expansion. I think that would be awesome. But B, because the way that the lore is going right now, we are kind of very much softening the barriers between Horde and Alliance. You know? Very much so. There's a tweet which is in response to one of our tweets about the short story, which I think sums up the discontent about it quite a lot. And I don't agree with this person necessarily, but I do value their opinion, and I don't want anyone to give anyone any shit on Twitter because of this. But I think it's interesting to hear the point of view of someone who thinks this is bad. And they say, story like this is frustrating because all the interpersonal drama and characterization is very interesting and well done, but the world building is just shambles. Why is a story about 3 Alliance characters set in a Horde city, and why is them being allowed there taken for granted? I get it. Now, I disagree with it being a problem, but I am sympathetic to it, to people who do see it as a problem. It's not always good to soften barriers and soften edges. It takes a lot of character from things. Counterpoint. After a while, it's the only logical place for a story to go. After a while, you know, the story of WoW that is, and Warcraft 3 has always been, we hate each other, we're having a war, but even within that, like, loads of our leaders are friends and happy to work together. And also, pretty much every year on the dot, there's a world-ending threat that demands that we all band together. And it's like, after a while, not having a softening of the faction divide is actually just very limiting in terms of character and in terms of story. So I think just in principle, I think that's okay. And I think it's good. And I think it's interesting. After 20 years of faction war, I think it's genuinely interesting to explore what Azeroth is like when that faction war isn't there. Especially when it comes to the Blood Elves. Because the thing about the Blood Elves is, why should they give a fuck about the Horde, really? Like, let's be real here. The Blood Elves are High Elves. And, you know, they've lived in Kel'Thuzad, Silvermoon for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Many of them the same people because they live for a long time. Like, if you're Lorthamar, you've been a Blood Elf for like 15 years. 20 years out of a lifespan of thousands of years. Okay? Like, all your friends from the before times are before you became Blood Elves. Like, all the people you live with in Silvermoon, you were all High Elves before, and then you just called yourself Blood Elves for a bit, and you had a bit of a wobble, and you joined the Horde, and the Horde have been really good to you. That's really cool. But in the grand scheme of things, you weren't Horde for much longer than you were Horde. And, like, your real loyalty is to your race as a Blood Elf. You know? Your loyalty to the Horde, as it is with many Horde races, is a loyalty of convenience and survival more than anything. And when that need for survival and that need for unity with people to be against another faction, when that wears down, why wouldn't you let Alleria into Silvermoon? Why wouldn't you let the head of the Alliance into Silvermoon? Why wouldn't you let a High Elf Silver Hand member into Silvermoon? Just why wouldn't you? It just makes sense. Think of it from the Blood Elves' point of view here. They are rebuilding their city after the Scourge invasion, right? They're rebuilding. They want to repopulate. Why would they shut out High Elves? Why would they do that? It's like, we've got a city to rebuild. We've got a city to repopulate. Of course we're going to let people that used to live here back in. Of course we're going to let the children of people that used to live here back in. Why wouldn't they? And yeah, and Lorthamar is, you know, like he's been well chill with Horde and Alliance relations for so long. What High Elves? I mean, Alleria, Arator for a start, but there are loads of them. You know, there are plenty of High Elves all over the place. Varisa is a fucking High Elf, obviously. There are plenty. All of the Blood Elves were High Elves. And the thing that defined a Blood Elf, i.e., they were, you know, using the Fel instead of arcane energy because they couldn't get access to any arcane energy, so they used the Fel instead. And that was one of the defining characteristics of Blood Elves. They don't do that anymore. Like, they use the power of the Sunwell, which now is infused with arcane and light energy. I think High Elves are absolutely fine. The Void Elves on the other side would be a real problem. Well, the Void Elves are very specifically banished from Silvermoon, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, like, it is canon and has been since BFA that all High Elves are allowed into Silvermoon to visit the Sunwell. That's been canon since BFA. This isn't a new thing in this story. Alleria herself was allowed in to visit the Sunwell, and then she had a bit of a void attack and it all went wrong, and now she's not allowed in anymore. This story opened. It's not like they're just like, yo, Alliance, come here, come and live in our city, you'll be absolutely fine. This story opens with Lorthamar telling Alleria, like, you gotta be gone by sundown or we're gonna fucking kill you. You know? Like, this isn't a friendly welcome. It makes perfect sense, in my opinion, that Arator would be allowed in a Silvermoon that is rebuilding and wants to repopulate and wants to become the place that it once was before the Horde attack. I have no problem with that at all. I think people are much more, the issue people have is with Turalyon. Yeah. The issue people have is with Turalyon being allowed into into Kel'Thalas to visit his son. And I mean, yeah, fine. But since he's been leader, he has not waged war against the Horde. He's been an incredibly peaceful leader of the Alliance. He's been the most peaceful leader of the Alliance that the Horde have ever dealt with. He's the only leader of the Alliance that hasn't literally done a war. And he visited his son while he was there. And I know people are saying, oh, he wasn't there to visit his son. He was there to talk with the Adrin. That was right. But it's like, you know, if the blood elves were being incredibly strict and actually gave a shit, they'd have been like, okay, well, as soon as you've had your meeting with the Adrin, you have to fuck off or we're going to fucking kill you. They didn't do that, did they? They were like, you know, he has gone to visit his son after talking with the Adrin. It's fine. Like, he's allowed to do that. The implication from the story is that if he doesn't do it regularly, it's certainly not the first time that he's done it. It's not the first time he's been to visit his son there. You know, it's something that happens. Yeah, I get that the story explains it with him going to visit Liadrin, but clearly he's allowed to go and visit his son as well. Like, it's not, you know, he hasn't snuck off. They know he's there. So why let them back in now? Because they've been at peace for 5 years, canonically now. 5 years. I mean, technically they've been at peace since the end of BFA, which is 7 years. Like, I mean, that's a huge period of peace. In real world terms, let alone WoW terms. I don't see... I get that it did make me go, oh, so the leader of the Alliance, the de facto leader of the Alliance, it just comes and goes. I don't think he comes and goes. I don't think he... You know, he doesn't come and go as he pleases. I have no doubt that the guard of Silvermoon have eyes on him, right? They know where he is at every moment. But Arator is a trusted member of Blood Elf Society at the moment. He's a valued member, a valued citizen of Silvermoon, as he fucking should be. And, you know, it's his family. And don't forget, Turalyon saved the planet when he went through the Dark Portal. Like, he literally saved everyone on the planet. Him and Alleria and the rest of them. Like, there's a statue of him in Stormwind, but everyone knows what they did. Everyone knows that he saved them. And at the time when Turalyon saved everyone, the High Elves were part of the Alliance. Or as good as. So it's understandable if they've got a bit of a soft spot for him, honestly. Yeah, Turalyon and Lorthamar have got history from way back. Turalyon knows his fucking way around the light and would probably be like a very valuable resource in kind of like, you know, doing stuff with the Sunwell and stuff. So the complaint in real terms when it comes down to gameplay and stuff is that, you know, we're making an established Horde capital into a neutral zone. And I can understand that. I don't agree with it as a criticism, but I can understand it as a criticism. I am trying to be sympathetic to it. The obvious thing to do is to point out the fact that the new Night Elf capital, although it's not meant to be the new Night Elf capital, but it's all that the Night Elves have got at the moment, you know, Belemeth is also a neutral zone. Granted, when Horde characters are in there, there's a debuff that says you are being watched. It doesn't do anything. There are some portals they can't use, but it says you are being watched all the time. They're not like, they are tolerated rather than welcome, if that makes sense. Which you'd imagine is the same for Turalyon in Silvermoon. Now, a very fair criticism that I read from this guy, Ramstein. So like I say, please don't give anyone shit just because I'm reading out their comments. I'm not reading them out so that you can give them shit. I don't want that. If I find out you're giving anyone shit, I will fucking ban you forever. There's the idea that the Horde is like person of color coded and the Alliance is white coded, and I don't like that, but I see it And if it's what people of color tell me, then I have to take that seriously. And someone said, like, you know, as a person of color, the whole "you are being watched" thing in Bellameth kind of just reminds me of any time I go into a shop. Which, like, I think as a white person, it's very easy for me to kind of dismiss that and be like, yeah, but it's just world building, and it's, you know, it's not meant to, that's not what it's meant to be, and you just get over it and stuff. But you know what? Fair enough, honestly. Like, I get it. I feel like, yeah, okay, fine. I get that, and I get it. And you know, I'm glad that someone has told me that. And it is an interesting point of view, and it's not a point of view that had ever occurred to me, because of course it didn't, because why would it? And it's really interesting to hear someone say that. Big reach, in my opinion? No, I mean, yeah, but my opinion isn't as informed as theirs, is it? You know, I can say it's a big reach in my opinion, but is my opinion, like, my opinion isn't as, when it's like, when it comes to how a person of color feels when they go into a shop, I think they probably know a bit more than I do. I'm willing to give them that one, mate, to be honest. You know? It definitely still happens. And yeah, so I get that. I do get that. So, and likewise, when people are saying, like, you know, the Horde are, like, you know, native coded and like person of color coded and stuff like that, and the Alliance are, and you know, it's just another example of the Alliance being allowed to do whatever they want and just kind of like stomp on whatever kind of sanctuary the Horde have and stuff like that. I get it. It's easy for me to have a gut reaction where I want to roll my eyes at that kind of stuff and be like, oh, that's just not what it's about. Can we just, like, you know, just keep, but it is valid because it's how it makes people feel. And I think that's fair. You know, it's not something I would have thought of myself, which is why it's important to have people tell me that. So yeah, I mean, my opinion is that whereas those are valuable insights, I would still rather everyone was at peace, right? I still think it's okay for the story that everyone is at peace. And whereas we can find instances of it where people find the way it's like shown in game or whatever to be uncomfortable, like in these instances, which I do try and understand, I think the overall arc and intention of these people are at peace and they are not fighting anymore, and therefore they are mixing more, and therefore some of them are going to turn up in some of the other ones' cities and shit. I kind of think overall that's a good thing, and that's cool. So the details we might find problems with, the way certain things are put into action and done there, we might have problems with. And I'm sympathetic to all those individual instances, but the overall arc of, you know, actually they're just at peace and we're going to see them pop up in each other's cities and stuff. Honestly, I think that's fine. I think that's good and an interesting thing to explore.